Well, hello and welcome back to I Believe She's Amazing. I have the great honor and privilege today of speaking to Miss Katrina Sanders, who I have connected with on LinkedIn. Everybody pretty much that I have been interviewing, I've connected with in some way on social. And sometimes it's through meeting somebody in person or an old friend or something. But it's so amazing to me how connected we can be on social. And I just admire all the work you're up to. Just before we started, this girl just flew in, like literally by the seat of her pants. I'm like, catch your breath, like just get yourself together here. And it's interesting as we take on this discussion today, Katrina, and all the amazing things you do. And I'm so excited for everybody to hear your journey and to learn from your just unabashed courage and your ability to overcome a lot of insurmountable odds and to just do things and to learn as you go. I think that the lessons in everything that you've done and all of the amazing things that you've accomplished will inevitably inspire people. And it's not just professional, it's personal too. So I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, Kim, thank you so much for having me. It truly is an honor to have somebody who has their thumb on the pulse of what powerful women are doing reach out to me and say, hey, you're a dental hygienist in Phoenix. This is cool. And to actually talk about it. So thank you. And thank you for housing this platform to all of the amazing people who are interested in being a part of the conversation about what it looks like to be able to empower women and to be inspired. One of the things that you and I talked about when we first met was it's so easy for women to tear each other down.
Yeah.
And that's a historic thing. That's an age-old thing, right? Women have constantly been in this scarcity mindset. They're competing with, their female counterpart for that raise. They're competing for that, job position. They're competing for the attention of a man. They're competing for whatever. And I think one thing that is so beautiful about having a conversation about empowering women and having a dialogue about look at what she's doing is it changes the dialogue from the scarcity mindset into a space of abundance. Like, look at what she was capable of doing, or look at where she went despite this.
Yes.
And that becomes a source of inspiration. So thank you for honoring that conversation. It is because of conversations like this that women like me were able to find that inspiration early on and were able to create the change that they wanted for their career, for their personal life, for their relationships, for the trajectory of where they were going. So thank you so much for having this conversation. It means a lot to me.
Oh my goodness, such a pleasure. Honestly, such a pleasure. And it's interesting because you defy the odds on so many measures. And yes, let's just do a quick little intro. We're going to get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts, if you will, about just exactly what you are. But Katrina really started as a dental hygienist. And after, and she's going to share a little bit more about this, but after becoming a little bit disenchanted with that and longing for something more, knowing that she had something more, she today travels the world. She's got a couple more travels just tying up the end of this year as we film this. She's wrapping up her 2022 year, speaking to audiences all over the US right now. She's also a DJ. She also just launched her own wine business. She also has a podcast called Tooth or Dare, which I think is the cutest thing ever. And, as a background in theater, she just got engaged. Like, there's so many things that she has undertaken, but much of that came from this base of she was bullied when she was young. So it's not like she had any of these special privileges that made her this like exceptional person. She started out the way so many of us do, with a longing for something more and a need to fulfill that desire for growth while overcoming any setbacks. So share a little bit, going back, we're going to touch on so much stuff, but share a little bit about that moment, Katrina, where you were a dental hygienist and all of a sudden you had this epiphany like, I think I'm made for more. How did you go about making that transition?
Thank you so much for that amazing intro, by the way. It's amazing because I do believe that for me and for all of us, that there is this underlying sensation that we are meant for more
Yes.
constantly. I don't think that that feeling or that emotion of I'm meant for more comes out of nowhere. I think part of the challenge that so many of us have is deeply rooted in an insecurity of knowing that we are capable of more, knowing that we can do more, but knowing that we are not doing that
Yes.
more, or
Yeah.
we're not in this space of, being able to invite that in. And so for me, like so many women, right? I was a practicing dental hygienist, and I will set up this caveat. There's nothing wrong with, I'm still a practicing dental hygienist. I love treating my patients. There's absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, it is an absolutely magnificent profession. It is an extremely, if anybody listening is interested in becoming a dental hygienist, talk to somebody who's a hygienist, learn about it. It's a very rewarding career.
Yes.
But I knew that I was capable and destined for more. I
Yeah.
knew that there was more within me.
Yes.
And I was working in clinical practice, and I was dating a significant other at the time. And I was working 6 days a week, trying to bring in an income to be able to afford the lifestyle that this gentleman wanted. And all of these things were going on where I felt like everything that I was doing was so much harder than
Mm.
it really needed to be. I felt like, you know, I, when people say, even being in a relationship, oh, love is hard, and we would be in these scenarios, him and I, where it was like, this is the hard part that everybody talks about. This is the work that you have to do with your partner. You know what I mean? And we sensationalize this concept of things are hard and things are challenging, and I'm a hard worker and I'm going to overcome it. And that was the story that I told myself day
Wow.
in and day out. This is just the hard work. These are the efforts that you
Right.
need to be putting in so that you're deserving of whatever it is that you get. And I finally got to this space where I thought, why is it so hard? Like
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, I grew up in a small town in the Midwest. And you brought it up, and it's spot on. Like, I was not the cool kid. I was not the popular kid. I was the dorky band geek. I was on the debate team. You know what I mean? I was skinny. I was awkward. I was in braces. I didn't know how to style my hair. My mom never taught me how to put my makeup on. Like, I didn't know how to shave my legs until I was in my late teens. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up as this kind of awkward little duckling. I
Oh,
went through high school, went to college, did the thing, got the 4.0, president of my class, graduated, working hard to get this position, and negotiating my hours and negotiating my pay and doing all these things and taking continuing education. And it was like, when does the hard part stop?
yeah.
Where do I step into this space of, I mean, I heard about it a lot, like feminine flow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where do you get to this space where the universe is like, I got you,
Yes.
when does that happen? Because I'm working so hard and I'm working so hard and I'm working so hard. And for me, I just had this moment of clarity of it shouldn't be this hard. Something is wrong.
Yeah.
And I really had to take a step back and acknowledge that for me, I was living a life. I was working in a profession. I was in a relationship with. I lacked boundaries that allowed for, end that sentence with whatever. It,
Yeah.
it wasn't working. And
Yeah.
I had to create a change because I was so tired of my own bologna sausage that I had to create something different. I had
Yeah.
to create a different story. I I came to the point where I realized that I was the author of my own story. I was writing the book. I was the one taking the pen to that paper. That everything that happened in my life came from a decision or a choice that I had made
Yeah.
previously
Yeah.
that brought me to this. Everything, the clothes I was wearing, the people who texted me every day, the pictures on social media, whatever that is, that all of those things were things that I had made a choice. And now here I was, that I was not a victim because things were happening to me, that I had allowed all of this to happen.
Wow.
And it was from that moment that I started to really study the fact that I'm not I'm not a victim of the circumstances around me within reason. Cause I know we'll talk about some of the, some of the things
Yeah.
that happened that you
Yeah.
don't have control over,
Yeah.
but I had control over, how I took care of my body.
Yeah.
I had control over the stories I told myself when I woke up in the morning and I looked in the mirror and who I saw looking back at me. I had control. Oh, I mean, I know it sounds bizarre, and I even have to tell myself this to this day, but I have control over my calendar. At
Yes.
any point in time, I can be like, nope, I'm not doing that
Yep.
to anything, anyone, with the exception of like taking my dogs to the vet, like that I will do, but I have control over all of these things.
Yeah.
And when you think about what that looks like, when you come to terms, when you are confronted with the fact that you have control over all of this, it changes the story. You
Mhm.
no longer become a victim. You recognize that you have an opportunity to be the victor in the
Mhm.
story,
Mhm.
that you get to be your own Prince Charming, that you get to be your own sugar daddy, that you literally can.
Yeah.
And that transition, I think, is the one that really created it. It was the catalyst that just changed it all for me.
Yeah.
But like so many of us, I had to have life pile itself on me for me to finally go, what's going on? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
And why am I not doing anything about it? Why am I permitting this to continue?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that's the beginning of the next chapter.
Love it. So many things that you said there really resonate, and I think, and I just want to reiterate and sort of encapsulate a lot of what you said there, because it isn't that nobody is going to be free of challenges. Like, that is just part of the human condition. But I love that you said that, you decided to take the pen back and realize I'm not a victim, even though sometimes we feel like, oh my God, why is all this stuff happening to me? There's a multitude of things that you sort of, this cascade of things. It's like, okay, wait a minute, I'm in control of this. I'm in control of what's happening to me. So that's like a level of responsibility that now we
Yes.
have to take for ourselves, right? And there's so much of today on social and different places where it's like, oh, poor you, you're part of this group of people that is victimized. And yes, there are, of course, and I'm not saying that there aren't, there are, but I think in most situations, we have the ability to say, I can take responsibility. Despite the circumstances, I can take responsibility for myself. And that's the first level of change. The second is really this level of conscious awareness. And I always think of it as, it's like this spirit of you, the Katrina spirit pops out and for a moment is looking over you like, wait a minute, girl, you're doing all these things. And you can actually do these different, and you can have a flow state. Yes, there's going to be seasons of growth and seasons of hard work and seasons of overcoming adversity, but really that flow state can be like the 80% of the time. And then you're sort of ping ponging, of course, between circumstances that happen to us. So I love that blend of things. And then that sense of like, this is actually my life and I get to be in control of this. The last thing I just wanted to say to everything that you said is that we all have this innate feeling that
Yeah.
we're made for more. And so if anybody's watching, like,
Yes.
yes, I know what she's talking about. I've had that. It is our human spiritual right. And I was listening to a podcast the other day from a behavioral psychologist, and he was saying we're actually hardwired for this change that you're describing. Our proteins in our body actually morph and change, and our body is that's an actual part of our evolution, but a lot of people shrink back and they ignore
Mhm.
those signs. And even just the idea that you were saying, like, boundaries, I can control my calendar, I can say yes to this, I can say no to that, I can be in control of the person or the people that I allow into my space. Okay, that's amazing. So all of that is awesome and I
Yeah.
so love it. I just want to ask you, when you had that moment and you were realizing all these things were piled on top of you, and now all of a sudden I can do these things, I can change these circumstances, were you, I'm all about personal growth, like I just think it's a part of life, like it's not,
Yeah.
we're not like a stagnant being, we are, and we have to evolve, it's just
Mhm.
part of the human condition. Were you reading things, were you listening to things, where was the impetus for this change, that other than just like this self-reflection, where did it come from?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. So, two things that I did. One, I started journaling.
Yes, I love.
And I'm an avid journaler. I know we've talked about this before. Like, I'm obsessed with journaling. When I started like most people do when they start journaling, where they're like, I suck at this. I don't know what I'm supposed to write about. You just sit there and you just stare at it. Right. So I bought a guided journal because I needed something that had prompts so that I could, at least when I was journaling, I was answering a question versus just like scribbling. Now I have my journal. I have a new journal that I use every year. And I write about, like, I mean, this is literally like my thoughts, my challenges, my successes, like all those things.
Yeah.
But I started with a guided journal, and this particular guided journal was geared for women who felt like they were, what's the proverbial, like when a lobster starts to grow outside of its shell, it gets very uncomfortable, right? And as it continues to grow, if it doesn't get out of that shell, it's going to feel more and more uncomfortable until it gets out and goes into the next shell, or however they describe that. Crabs are the same way, right? All of these different crustaceans. So, this is really built for women that feel like they're too big for their shell. And they're in the uncomfortability space where it's like, I'm so uncomfortable. And the uncomfortability is what forces you out, forces you to go and say, I need to find the next thing. So I bought this guided journal, and I'll never forget the first question in this guided journal was, if you could do whatever you wanted for the rest of your life, like envision your life, envision like, and we don't do a lot of this.
So
By we, I mean, you and I do, we manifest that, you know what I mean? But women, like, we are not wired to like picture what a beautiful life would look like. We're programmed rather for the opposite. Like, what happens if, you don't get into dental hygiene school? What happens if nobody, hires you? What happens if you move to Arizona and you don't make any friends? Like, we're so wired for the opposite. Again, it's that scarcity mindset, right? That scarcity mindset. So this was, kind of the first exercise that I had experienced in a space of abundance, where it was like, okay, so let's pretend you are living like everything is perfect in your life. What does that life look like? What do you do? What, when you wake up in the morning, what does waking up in the morning look like? What are you wearing or not wearing? You know what I mean? Some of us don't, some of us don't wear anything when we sleep. What do your bed sheets feel like? What time are you waking up? Who's next to you or who's not next to you? Or, you know what I mean? Like, who's jumping into bed and saying, Mom, I'm so excited that you're awake today. What does that life look like? Like, picture that. And so it started to kind of walk me through some of those exercises. And the critical piece to the story is, the guided journal asked me, if you could spend your days doing whatever you wanted, money was no object, what would you do? And the cool part of the story is, when you think about it, it's like, oh my gosh. So a free vacation, like PTO time, like money's no object. Like, oh, I would go to the beach and I'd go wine tasting with my gays, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, but the reality is, we're all purpose-driven beings. There is something stronger inside of you. So what is that thing? If you could just scribble it, and the idea with journaling is you write it and nobody else has to see it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I took my pen and I wrote, I would drink wine, I would talk about dentistry, and I would save homeless animals. That's what I wrote. And then I closed it up because I was like, I don't want anybody to see this. I mean, this is crazy. But here's what happens when I took that pen to that paper. I was writing the next chapter. I was telling the universe, this is what I want. So now here I am 5 years later, and I own a business. I literally make money out of drinking wine, talking about dentistry, and I get to save homeless animals as an arm or an aspect of my business.
Yeah.
But it began from that one piece. It began from not being scared, just putting it out there. Just even if I had no accountability, nobody else needed to know, nobody else needed to read it, that I needed to put in my own handwriting that this is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And that became the wish list to the universe, so to speak.
Oh, I love it. And that is no small thing. I mean, putting things out into the universe for anybody that's watching that isn't familiar with the law of attraction and manifestation, it is a law and it is like gravity. You can't see it, but it's there. And so much of your story in the beginning, and I think so many people's story, is that default to scarcity, that default to, but this is all I know. This is all I'm living right now. This is hard, and it's hard for everybody, and maybe you don't have people around you that are encouraging you, and you actually don't need to have people around you that you have resources for sure, but you have to have that drive. It's like you said, that lobster that wants to crack out of the shell. You have to be okay with that discomfort when you start to look at your truth and what it is that you really desire to do. I love that exercise. I love, for me, it was more like vision boarding and making a mind movie, like similar thing. I did do some journaling for sure. And I write affirmations. And it is, it's like that saying, careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And for the most part, if we're you're like, oh, life sucks right now, and you wake up and you have that knot in the pit of your stomach because you have to go do your day and it's not the day you really want to do, but you got to do it anyway. That can change, that can shift with something as simple as just taking a beat. Just taking a beat and writing down and envisioning exactly what it is. And you said it, earlier, Katrina, when you started to describe this, we're so busy that we really don't take a minute to reflect on just a second, where am I? And is this where I want to be? And where do I really want to be? And getting clear on that. I love your story. And I love, when I was reading my notes before we jumped on our call, I love that you said, I want to talk about dentistry, I want to drink wine, and I want to save animals. And it's like, how the heck's that all going to come together? But you manifested it and you created it. Yeah. So let's talk about how you started it, because I know that it was, humble beginnings. So you were working by day, moonlighting in the evening, and you were showing up to these events, offering wine, but really talking in these back rooms, maybe not making a ton of money, maybe not a lot of people were showing up. So share a little bit about that, those humble beginnings and how it started and where it's evolved to and how it grew.
Oh, I love this. So it's funny because after I wrote that, I put the book away and I thought, this is ridiculous. There's no way that anybody's going to be able to build a business on this. I don't know why I bought this silly book on Amazon, whatever, $13 wasted, slid it off to the side. I forgot about it. I completely forgot about it. Wow. Then a few months later, I taught dental hygiene for several years, and I had left my teaching position, and I had several students now graduated. So they were professional clinicians reach out to me and they said, hey, you were one of our favorite instructors in hygiene school. I taught a lot on injections, and they wanted some coursework on advanced injection techniques. And at the time I was studying for my sommelier exam, and I thought, you know what, I would love to do some coursework for them. I was a VIP member with a local wine bar down in Old Town Scottsdale, where at the time you could use their back room for free. So as you start to see all these like little pieces come together, honestly, it was just a space of flow for me, right? It was, these people want this, and I'm happy to talk about dentistry, and I'm studying wine. And what might be kind of cool is if I do a continuing education program where I teach about injection technique, and as a component of using the back room, I had to buy a case of wine. So I'll buy a case of wine. I'll charge a couple of dollars, just enough to cover the cost of the wine and a charcuterie board. Yeah. And so that I can study this, so that I can study my, sommelier needs, et cetera. What I'll do is I will actually walk them through a wine flight and give them information about, here's this wine and this is what we're doing. And here's this wine and here's what we're doing, So I did that. I started doing that. And it turns out dental people, like most people, love to drink wine, and they love it when whatever it is that they're doing is fun and dynamic and different. And so what of course started to happen is, as I'm teaching this programmatic content, I'm overselling my courses. I'm having to, rent chairs from a local rental shop so that I have enough seats for everybody. I started to, share about some of the work that I was doing on social media. Meeting planners, people who are in charge of booking speakers, started to learn that there was some dental hygienist in Arizona who was selling out courses by doing, wine and continuing education, and what's this all about? And so it started to accelerate. I started to get my name out there. And it was interesting because the profession that I chose in dental speaking is a relatively traditional profession. There's a very relatively confined expectation for what somebody looks like, how they dress, their age, their gender, the number of years of experience, their education, even, the colors they use on their slides, the Bookman Old Style or Times New Roman that they use on their slides. I mean, it is very established.
Yeah.
So for some, redhead in her early 30s to come out, not wearing pantyhose, wearing bright red heels, lecturing with a wine glass in hand with slides that were hot pink with cursive on them, but were slides that had the research, that told a story,
Yeah.
that attracted an entire population of people who are excited to hear this, started to create a movement.
Yeah.
What I mean to say is, I decided that if I was going to do this, that I was going to do it from a complete space of authenticity,
Yeah.
that I was going to build coursework and slides that I wanted to look at, that I wanted to talk about, that I would buy a ticket to, that I would want to participate in if I were seeing this flyer out somewhere on social media. I started to create a space where me and people like me would enjoy this type of content. And so, as to your point, it's never easy. I wish I could say that the dental speaking world put open arms out there and said, come on in. We're so excited for another dental hygienist to
Yeah.
talk about local anesthesia. Unfortunately, although I was studying abundance mindset, I was entering a profession that had a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
If Katrina Sanders gets hired for this speaking engagement, that means I don't get hired for that speaking engagement, right?
Right.
So, I stepped into this world and I stepped into a traditionalist concept that I do believe now that I've been in the profession for 5 years. It's really incredible. It's incredible to see what happens when you become your authentic self,
Yeah.
because people, they can't look away.
Yeah.
They can't look away when somebody's being authentic, when they're just being their raw, honest. Just this past weekend, I was in Seattle. I presented for the Pacific Northwest Dental Conference, which is a very prestigious dental conference. Thousands of people attend that every year. I stood on a stage in a room with, doctors and dental hygienists and office managers and assistants, and, from age 82 all the way down to 22. I mean, I had a myriad of people in that room. And the reality is, it didn't matter the color of my slides. It didn't matter the color of my heels. It didn't matter the font that I used. What they were focused on, what they were tethered to, is the passion, the message, and the authenticity of me sharing this story. That it becomes this space where, because I make it okay for them too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I am, and I stand on stages and I say, it is not okay that we skip doing an oral cancer screening because we're running behind. It is not okay that we skip taking blood pressure on a patient because, the patient gets upset and doesn't want to stay. These things are not okay, because I'm saying these things, because I'm creating this space where this is the expectation of not only what I see for the profession, but how I show up within that.
Mm.
It creates this movement where people all around, no matter their age, no matter their gender, no matter their race, no matter, how long they've been in the profession, no matter what issues they had in their practice Monday morning or what issues they will have that next Monday morning, doesn't matter. They all sit there and collectively understand, you're right. It is not okay that we are doing these things, that my authenticity creates a space for everybody to acknowledge that it's not about the pink, it's not about the cursive, it's about the message, and it's about why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so it really was an interesting journey for me, because although I was fixated on all of these other things, oh my gosh, why is this speaker that I respect so much telling me, I can't believe you're walking out on stage without pantyhose on, that it's not about that stuff. Do you know what I mean? Which literally was told to me one time. It's not about that stuff.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean?
I
It's
love,
about, it's about it all, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And I love, Katrina, the fact, all of that, the fact that this like, you know, amazing little bubbly redhead comes out and has the pink slides. In fact, the pink on your, I saw you post quite, I don't even know how we got connected on LinkedIn, but the pink, I love pink, but the pink really drew me in because it was different, because it stood out. And you're so right. It's not about the stuff. You are you show up authentically. And I think that message, I just want to reiterate, because it doesn't matter what field, what profession, what it is that you're doing, when you're coming from a place of authenticity. And I think we're living in a really unique time and space now, because everybody online is a brand. It doesn't matter what platform you're on,
Yes.
Instagram, LinkedIn, like wherever, you're a brand. And the worst thing that you could possibly do is try to fit into what everybody else is doing. And we see that happen often. I love that
all the time on social media, all the time. You know, people say, oh, this is what's trending, I'm going to do that too. And it's when you do that, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said it, and I just want to highlight what you said. It is the law of attraction. You are a magnet for what you want to attract. So what kind of a magnet are you? Are you a magnet that's pretending to be everybody else? Because then whatever you're attracting, that is a false attraction there.
Yes.
Right.
And that's where that's that saying of alignment, right? Where you don't feel aligned. It's because you're trying to be something or someone that you're not. And it's a very noisy space. So I honor and appreciate that you are living and even the don't wear pantyhose and don't wear I mean, it's so ridiculous at the end of the day. And the other thing that's really important, and so many things that I've done over the years too, if it comes from a place of meaning and mission, meaning and purpose, however you want to say it, your message is going to be received differently. So the fact that you weren't saying what everybody else was saying just to comply to this status quo, these standards that had been set by whomever and whatever, and everybody was just sort of following these silly rules, that you were showing up and saying, from a place of serving our clients, serving those who lay in the chair before us. We need to be better. We need to do something. And I think that that's without, obviously, I mean, that wasn't a moralistic stand. It was we need to do this better, because we're in the business of serving and caring for people, and we're letting people down. And I think that, your success, I know it's been 5 years and I know it's been a journey. So it hasn't been like an overnight, home run, as it isn't for anybody. But I love that you're somebody who's gaining traction in a world that seems kind of mundane, dental hygiene.
Sure. Yeah.
But you're doing it in a way that's authentic. And I think that that's a transferable message to anybody in any field. Be yourself, show up authentically as you, and come with a heart and a mission to serve and to make a difference. And I know when we were talking previously, you had just come back from a trip to Africa, I think.
Yeah.
9 weeks ago now, but that is something as a greater mission for you, is to take more hygienists to really, talk a little bit more about that. Is it to help people in Africa with dental hygiene? Is it to expose them to other parts of life so we can have a greater appreciation for what we have?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. That absolutely is an aspect of this. I think, you have to be able to look to the world that you've built around you as a renewable source of energy for you. And it's so interesting. We've talked a little bit about this. I'm a little bit of a hippy dippy, like I'll say to my fiance, I'll be like, babe, it's a blood moon tonight, Mercury's in retrograde, or, whatever. And he's like, okay, whatever, but to me, I'm so into that, so
Yeah.
I do a lot of breath work. And I've got my crystals and I do the whole thing. And my breathwork coach actually asked me the other day, because I was zigzagging between multiple cities. I live in Arizona. I've been in Arizona certainly less than 50% of like my time. Like I spend most of my time on the road. And when you're on the road, it's not like you show up in a hotel room and then you're by yourself. I mean, you've got to be out there and you're talking to participants and you're talking to meeting planners and you're on stage. I presented when I was in Seattle this weekend. I presented for 6 hours, so you're there and you're just going the whole time in high heels and no pantyhose, So
Yeah.
my breathwork coach asked me, where do you get your energy from?
Yeah.
Where do you get, and not like, how do you eat food and get energy, but where do you get that renewable source of energy? You have to be able to find where that source is. And, one of the things that starts to happen when you become more authentic, when you start to honor layers of yourself as an authentic human, the things that don't make sense, that don't align with your authenticity, start to go away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I hate to, say it that way, but you start to acknowledge that like, maybe this friendship is not a friendship that aligns with the authentic version of me and the direction that I'm going.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a habit that you had.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe it's I need to drink one last glass of wine, because I wake up in the morning and I feel like garbage, or, whatever maybe it's how you take care of your body or don't take care of your body, or the clothes you're wearing. There are things that as you step into more layers of authenticity, there are things that will no longer align with you that used to, but they used to align with you because you had to create a false aspect of yourself, or you had to do certain things, or you had to tolerate certain things, behaviors, people, energies, whatever. Right. So when you become a more authentic version of yourself, though, those things no longer make sense.
Yeah.
And there are things that you become a magnet and you start to attract.
Yeah.
So then, the clothing that makes you feel powerful and strong. You know what I mean? I always say, like, a woman when she's walking down the street and her bra and panties match, because you're like, good for, there's a confidence there, right? The people, the friendships, the job opportunities, the car, the house, whatever. When you become a more authentic version of yourself, you become a magnet and you start to attract those things.
Yes.
And so for me, a lot of that started to evolve into, I am not somebody, and my fiance laughs at me all the time about this. We just had a dialogue about this morning. I am not somebody who loves being in the masculine energy of business. I do not like negotiating money. I hate QuickBooks. I hate spreadsheets. But that's not why I do what I do.
Yeah.
I do what I do because to me, it's all about impact.
Yes.
It's about creating something bigger and more magnificent. And so that's my motivator. As long as I'm out there and I'm creating an impact, I'm sharing a message, people are in alignment with that. Absolutely. So Africa was that next step for me.
Yeah.
So I'd been studying the genocide that had happened in the Republic of Rwanda in 1994. Right when it happened. And for those of you who have maybe seen the movie Hotel Rwanda or are familiar with the genocide, it was incredible what happened to that country at that time.
Yeah.
The Tutsis were attacked by the Hutu people. These were people that lived in communities together. So these were neighbors attacking neighbors. It was truly a civil war.
Yep.
Young children, little boys were taken into small little, militaries and were brainwashed and told to kill their father, kill their parents. Women were raped. I mean, it was absolutely devastating.
Yes.
What happened. What came out of it was, and the killings, the entire genocide happened over a long spectrum of time. The killings happened in about 3 months. Millions of people were killed. They they predict, or they expect, they're still uncovering more remains from people today. As of the recording of this podcast, which 2022, we're still recovering things. But what resulted from that is people my age. So in 1994, I was 9 years old. People my age, that now their parents were slaughtered, they were killed, had to go live with their aunt, or ended up becoming a child of their neighbor. That there started to become this blend, the community, and that sense of family, and that sense of camaraderie, and that sense of, we've all been through this together, so we're going to take care of each other together,
Wow.
started to evolve out of that, from deep tragedy. I mean, literally blood running in the streets of Kigali, to people saying, we need to repair this, we need to come together. And I was so moved by that. Even, as I'm studying this as a teenager, young adult, I was absolutely moved by it. So I start teaching. I start, working as a dental hygienist. I'm a faculty member. I want to become a speaker. And I was well on my way. I was starting to get speaking engagements. It was absolutely terrific. And then I received a call from home. It was my father telling me that mom had collapsed in the kitchen. It was not a heart attack. It was not a stroke. It was not a pulmonary embolism. We didn't know what happened to her, but I needed to make arrangements to fly back to Wisconsin, because doctors were advising that she would not make it. And so 62 years old, there's my mom on life support. Her lungs were not breathing on their own. Her heart was not beating on its own. And we told dad that it was okay to remove life-saving measures on her. And she is an organ and tissue donor. We're very proud. Many people are alive today and can see because of her gifts of organ and tissue donation.
Wow.
But we lost her. And the cause of death was she had scar tissue in her airway that came up, occluded her airway, and she suffocated in her own kitchen before dad discovered her and attempted CPR on her.
Oh
That morning, the morning mom collapsed, she felt like she was struggling to breathe. So she went to an ear, nose, and throat specialist who told her that everything was fine and perfectly normal for her. So I became angry. I became angry because this was a beautiful example of how the healthcare profession had failed my family. And here I am, so busy lecturing on stages across the United States and around the world, and my own mother is suffering from an airway issue that ultimately killed her. So I was devastated and angry, and going through all the steps of grief. And a few months later, I was at a conference, and this woman, her name is Kim Harms, she's a dentist out of the Twin Cities area, was speaking about how her son, a 19-year-old, very promising music student at Columbia, took his own life. And she was absolutely devastated. She experienced the pain of loss and, questioning as a parent, all the things that you question, right? And she said that her friend told her, come to Rwanda, come see what it's like to meet a community of people that, despite tragedy, have found a way to rise above. So she's lecturing about Rwanda, and I thought, this is so great. So I wrote in my little notebook, one of these days you're going to go to Rwanda with Kim Harms. And I put it off to the side. 2 years later, I am, gearing up for the holidays, getting ready for Christmas. I call my dad, like I do every morning. Call my dad. He's my best friend in the whole wide world. And dad's not answering the phone. And I start to panic. And my brother and sisters decided to call the non-emergency police number. The police arrived, found dad collapsed in the house. Dad was transported to a hospital in northern Wisconsin. And we literally lived the exact same nightmare again, this time with dad.
No
This
way.
was in December of 2020. It was not COVID. He had walking pneumonia. He had been to a doctor 2 days prior. The doctor said everything was fine and perfectly normal. My father passed. He was septic. We watched him take his last breath over a Zoom meeting.
Oh my God.
Because we weren't allowed in the room. And once again, I was angry. I was devastated. I had hit rock bottom. That was absolutely my rock bottom.
Yeah.
Something interesting happens when you hit a rock bottom like that. You realize nothing can ever hurt you.
Mm,
Nothing can ever affect you. You will never be in more pain than you are in that moment.
mhm.
And there I was in pain. So I planned dad's funeral, gave his eulogy, said my goodbyes to my best friend, came back to Arizona. And that first weekend back, I had to go to a dental conference. And I thought I should go just to get my mind off of everything. I'd cried all the tears. My body could not make any more tears.
Oh my God.
So I went to this conference, and wouldn't you know it, there's Kim Harms, and
Wow.
she's lecturing. This time, Kim's husband had just passed. And so she's talking about how, through all of this grief and all of this pain in her life, that she looks to Rwanda as her source. And
Wow.
so I thought, that's it. I'm going to do it. So I walked up to her and I said, "You don't know who I am." And she said, I know who you are. I said, "Okay." Yeah, I've heard you speak a few times. I need to come with you to Rwanda. And she said, "Okay, let's do it." So
Wow.
we finally planned everything. This summer, we went to Rwanda. We did dental humanitarian work while we were there. I met with doctors, dentists, dental therapists. We looked at the overt, decay, the disease that's happening in the Republic of Rwanda. I met Dr. Thomas Lee, who's an incredible dentist, retired and moved to Rwanda to be able to, really meet a lot of the underserved dental needs of the community. My first question is, how can I help? What do you need? We started to, conceptualize educational programs to help the dental community there. One
Wow.
of the results of the genocide is that libraries were destroyed
Wow.
because uh, the invaders did not want Rwanda to thrive. They did not want Rwandans to be able to learn, to be sustainable. So library buildings were destroyed, books were burnt. And so one initiative that Kim Harms has done in her son's passing is set up a grouping of libraries, the Eric J. Harms Memorial Library, where they have libraries in various remote villages throughout Rwanda to help educate and provide a source. And
Mm.
so we dedicated a memorial library in mom and dad's name while we were there in Rwanda. So out in the village of Karanj is a library with my mom and dad's face on a placard. Um,
Wow.
it's those things that, again, going back to my breathwork coach, asking like, where do you get your energy? Where do you get your source?
Mhm.
It's, I needed to be there. I needed to see the children who are going to be reading mom and dad's books. I
Mm.
needed to be there next to Kim Harms, who was there at the dedication, who literally sat there and took photos with me and saw about the incredible amount of gratitude. You don't come back from a trip like that the same person. You
Oh,
just don't, you
no.
know. But what it became about for me is it's impact, but it's legacy.
Yes.
It's telling mom's story, telling dad's story, telling it in a way that helps this world understand that we can't go back to what we did before,
Yeah.
that there are opportunities that we have with the beautiful moments we have on this planet to be able to create that change,
Mm.
to be able to be a part of something bigger than ourselves.
Mhm.
And that even some podunk dorky band geek from Greendale, Wisconsin can do small little things to create an impact that helps the world around them to be better. So
Mhm.
that's the mission, that's the goal, that's the why, that's what all of this is about. It's not about the number of invoices I send out, it's not about the number of stages I speak on, it's about what those individuals who hear my message, who hear my story, are able to do to create that change with their patients. To, I can't tell you how many times when I share mom's story that people say to me, if nothing else, like, I need to call home. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
for the people who do have, are blessed to have family with them, elderly grandparent, whatever, call home.
Yeah.
If that's the only thing that you get away from that message, amazing. Call home. I would give anything in the whole wide world to be able to call home and have my mom or have my dad pick up the phone. I would give anything to be able to do that. So it is about legacy. It's about impact. And it's about creating the movement that feels authentic, raw, and honest for me.
Wow, like goosebumps over and over again. And it's amazing how, again, going back to how we started this conversation, even Katrina, when crappy things happen, like that is, I know what it feels like to lose your parents, sadly, and I'm so sorry for your loss and how
Thank
sudden,
you. Sorry
tragic.
for yours.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But it rocks you to your core, and it reminds you of what's important. It reminds you
Yeah.
of the fact that also that you can take tragedy and you can pay it forward to create a legacy, to make a difference, so that at least there's some little smuck of meaning that's put to something that seems so meaningless and so difficult to understand. And what a full way for you to give back to both your parents, to their memory, to all the things that you're so committed to doing to create that legacy. That how lucky is the dental hygiene world, honest to God, to have
Thank you.
you as this voice and as this person that's there serving and leading and making a difference. Like, really, that is just so profound. It really is so profound. With I believe she's amazing mission and grassroots movement that we started in honor of my friend many, many moons ago. It was, not unlike that. It was, we lost somebody that we were really close to. She was super young, and she just went around telling everybody she thought they were amazing. And I truly think you're just such an amazing person. And I think it's important that we say that when we see it and when we feel it to people. And this is a women's movement because my friend was a woman, but it's to men too. Your dad was a great guy, I'm
Yes.
sure. And it's men and women. It's all of us coming together. And the phrase that we have is that one person can make a difference. And
Yeah.
that one person is you. That one person is somebody watching this who feels called by what you're sharing or inspired by what you're sharing. That amount of resilience that you've had, the capacity to overcome the challenges in order to turn something not so great into something that will live on forever, keep your parents' memory alive. I went to business school and I studied marketing, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you ever look that up, there's
Mhm.
this triangle, and at the base is food and water and shelter and sex and all those little things that keep us alive and thriving. But at the very top is this notion of self-actualization, right?
Actualization.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's exactly what your whole journey is this moment of self-actualization. So I'm so honored to know you, and I'm so grateful. I'm going to call you my friend, even though we haven't
Oh
met.
my gosh. Yes.
My
I
new
love
friend.
that.
You're just so awesome to learn from you and to allow other people to hear your story. I always ask this of people before, I believe you're amazing, which is why you're on this call. I think everybody has something amazing about them, but I so appreciate you. Who do you think is amazing in your sphere that you've come in contact with?
Oh my gosh. Um, I will say there's one name that continues to resonate anytime that somebody asks this. Um, and that would be my friend Ann Duffy. Ann Duffy is she's a dental hygienist as well. But she is somebody, in fact, I introduced the two of you
Yes,
because I
I
thought,
know.
oh my gosh, you
Yes.
two remind me so much of each other. She's just the queen bee, the fairy godmother, the one that just constantly pours from her heart. Her wine bottle is never empty, it seems like. She just she's got such a love in her heart, and she really she's there for women who need them during their moments of I can't tell you how many times I've called Ann Duffy crying about something, and she'll talk through that with me. And then when Dale and I got engaged, she was one of the first people like, oh my God, and just freaking out about that I celebrate my highs and I celebrate my lows. That she really and she does it because she cares. And
Yeah.
there's no falseness to it. It is true authenticity. You see it in her eyes that she absolutely is such a beautiful beacon of love and positivity. And I will say, when I see that, and when I spend time with her, which I just did this past weekend, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, before I zigzagged out to Seattle, and I was with her for a women's retreat, and just seeing the influence, the charge that she's leading, is so incredible. I
Wow.
will say, it's interesting. I had a rough series of travels, and I called Anne. I was really struggling, and she, talked through it with me. And, she always has so many amazing, bits of wisdom to share. So she shared this amazing piece of wisdom. And then, I kind of took a breath, and I went out with friends. I was supposed to go out to dinner with friends. So I was out to dinner with friends. I was in Boston, and this woman was sitting there by herself at dinner, and she got up, and she was reading a book. So you could tell she took herself out to dinner. She got up to go to the bar to get herself another glass of wine. And I stopped her and I said, "Excuse me, I just want you to know that you look amazing in that romper." She was wearing like the cutest romper, like, and it just, the color with her skin tone, like she just looked
Oh,
amazing. So
yeah.
I'm like, "Excuse me, you look amazing in that romper. Like that, this color is like everything." And she was like, just beside herself, like, "Oh my gosh." Cause how often do women do that? How often do we compliment each other? Right. But I was feeling this, pouring from Anne, and this love from her. And it was like, and I wanted to offer that to another woman. And so I said to her, "You look amazing." So she said, "Thank you." She went off to the bar, and she came back 2 minutes later, and she brought me a glass of wine, and she said, "I need you to have this. And here's why." She said, "I just moved to Boston 2 weeks ago. I don't know anybody here.
Oh my,
And today's the first day that I just decided, you know what? You can't just hang out in your apartment by yourself. You need to go out into public, and you need to start experiencing Boston. So I decided to take this book and put on this silly romper that I think I look ridiculous in. And I decided to go out and just read this book and have a glass of wine by myself. And then you said what you said to me, and it just made me feel so special and so loved." And it was like, okay, well, I wanted to say that to help you, but now you're making me feel better. So dang it,
yeah.
but but that is the power in the dynamic of somebody like Anne Duffy, is that I talk to her, and I feel so magnetized and moved. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only transferred. And so it is in those moments that I think about how magnificent she is. And Kim, you are absolutely in alignment with Anne Duffy, that your heart just knows no end, and you are so delighted to see the successes of women around you. It really is incredible to see. It's incredible to be a part of. And
Wow.
keep going, because people need to hear that. People need to be inspired. And that creates a small movement. Who knows what happened with that woman that I saw, and what the trajectory of her life. And I don't mean to say I'm a life changer, but who knows what you have the power to do, the smallest, most minuscule thing. Be kind to people. Say
Yeah.
something nice. Come
Yeah.
from a space of abundance.
Yeah.
Complimenting somebody doesn't take away from something else. Pour into, be that love, be that example,
Yeah.
because you really do become a magnet for what you want to attract.
Oh my God. Like literally, you have given me so many goosebumps during this conversation. I'm going to connect with Anne Duffy, like as soon as we get off from here.
Please do. Oh my God, she's amazing. You're going to love
Yeah.
her.
I know I am. I love you. I love what you said too. I just want to wrap this up with this, because it is this ripple effect, and it is the smallest things. Our life is built up of moments, and it's
Yeah.
not the big moments all the time. It's those little moments. And I applaud you for doing that, for going up to this woman and saying, "I love you" in your jumper. Like, how many times do we feel that? And this is the power of this movement. Say it when you feel it.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone and
Yes.
tell somebody. If it's online, tell somebody. We don't need to be trolls or trolls. We don't need those trolls.
Yes.
There's something going on that's not great in their lives, and I think it's very sad. But we can make the tiniest little difference in somebody's life. simply by showing up with kindness, as you said, by
Yeah.
speaking kindness and saying something to somebody that makes a difference to them. And that ripple effect, that came right back to like a boomerang. But it
Yes.
also, you saying it to her, that releases oxytocin for you. That's
Yes.
feel good chemical.
Yes.
I feel good. We're not in competition with one another. We're all here to be great and to celebrate one another. And the last thing I just wanted to say about Anne Duffy and you, which I think is so beautiful, is we chatted about this a bit, Katrina, and I love, because we're like, I just turned 54 and I'm on this journey.
Oh my gosh, you look amazing.
Oh, thanks. I'm a total recovering people pleaser. Like I was the
Oh my gosh.
recovering people
Mhm.
pleaser. So the conversation about boundaries and about setting healthy boundaries and editing out people that no longer serve you, that's okay. That doesn't make
Yeah.
you mean. But to have somebody in your life like an Anne Duffy who's there for you when you're at rock bottom, because that's actually easy
Yeah.
for people to do. People are there, they rally around like, oh, Katrina's having a moment. Ooh, what a shame. Like he's got this rocking big life, and ooh, let's go commiserate with Katrina while she's miserable.
Yes.
But to find
Yes.
somebody who's there to celebrate you when you win and when
Yeah.
you're aiming up and they're helping you aim up,
Yes.
now that's a true friend. So I love that
Oh,
you mentioned her as an amazing woman, and I'm excited to connect with her. And I just want to say thank you so much. Like literally, I have goosebumps as I'm wrapping this up.
oh,
And I thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy person. I applaud you. I applaud everything that you've done. I'm so grateful that we've cracked open this new friendship. And thank you again for taking the time to come on here and to share. I know there's bits and pieces that we didn't even get to chat about, but
I know.
thanks for coming on and sharing your story. You are an absolute light in this life. And I'm so grateful to know you and to have other people now know a little bit about your story. And we'll share a little bit about how people can connect with you. So maybe just share that as an end, and I'll also put it at the end of this video as well.
Oh, awesome. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you to the listeners, the viewers who made it all the way to the end of this video. This is amazing. So you can find me online. You can find me on my Instagram handle at the Dental WINEgenist. You can also find me on my website, www.katrinasanders.com. And you can also learn about our wines and the amazing charities that we give back to with our proceeds at www.thewineop.com.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, that's it for now. Thank you so much again, Katrina, for being here. Thank you all for watching. Until the next episode, stay safe and stay healthy. Remember, one person can make a difference. That one person is you. Thanks, Katrina. Big love.
Thank you. Oh, love to you, girl. Thank you.
Bye.